So good afternoon and welcome to the Quantum Alignment Show. I'm Karen Curry Parker and we're going to be talking today about quantum creativity and human design. This is information that is going to teach you the mechanics of why you are creating what you're creating. Why, especially if your life doesn't seem to be a reflection of what you genuinely want to have in your life, if you've been trying to manifest or use intentions or affirmations, and you haven't been getting what you really wanted. If it feels like you're blocked or stuck, or maybe those are some of the languages you've been using, some of the words you've been using around your creative capacity. This information that you're going to learn today is hopefully going to give you some insights into why you might be creating what you're creating. And we're going to talk a little bit about some concrete things that you can begin to do to change the nature of what you might be creating in your life so that you can start to get your life to match up the outer expression, all the things in your outer reality to match up the truth of who you really are. All right, so welcome to the Quantum Alignment Show. And today we're going to be talking about, as I said, awakening your quantum creativity. The piece that I really want you to get, because if you get this piece, you're going to get how precious you are in this story that we're living. If you understand that you play a part in orchestrating the next phase in the evolution of humanity, and that your own consciousness is part of creating what I like to call a new world. It's not really like a new world, but an expanded, more compassionate, sustainable, abundant version of the world we're living in right now. You can get that your role, that part that only you can play in the entire cosmic plan, is a key component of contributing to the consciousness of evolution in the world, contributing to the consciousness of evolution in the cosmos. You will get how utterly precious you are, because your drop in the ocean makes the ocean what the ocean is. If you're not adding your drop of consciousness to the creative pool, then what we're creating with isn't the same. You're missing, and the mixture is very different. You're that important and you're that precious. To start with the conversation that I want to have with you guys about quantum creativity, we actually have to do a little bit of history. And part of the history is understanding the nature of what's going on in the human design chart. The human design chart is actually mutating. It's changing. And we actually went through a big giant change around 1780. That's the first time we had a big change in the way in which we use energy. And what happened in the 1780s is we actually went from being a seven-centered being. If you know, familiar with the Hindu chakra system, you know it has 7 chakras, right? So we went from being 7 chakras to being 9 chakras. And what we saw in that transition is we saw, first of all, the emergence of the will center, or the ego. The heart chakra split into the G and the will center, and the solar plexus chakra split into the spleen and the solar plexus, which actually sets the stage for the next surge in evolution that we are on the cusp of right now. We are changing the way in which we operate. One of the things that's important to understand is that consciousness is the medium for evolution. And what we manifest in our outer reality is actually just a vibrational match or an artifact of our own consciousness. And as we went through this big evolution in 1780s, we saw the beginning of what's called oftentimes the Age of Enlightenment, and even the beginning of what is oftentimes referred to as the scientific revolution. And one of the leaders in the scientific revolution was a physicist. He wasn't really just a physicist. He was an all-around pretty holistically oriented guy. He didn't just do physics, but there was a scientist. I'm not even going to call him a scientist, a very brilliant man who was able to draw lots of relationships between things, named Sir Isaac Newton. And Sir Isaac Newton decided that one of the things he was going to do was figure out the rules of how the material world works. So the thing that I want you to really get is that the discoveries that Newton and all these scientists made during this era wasn't because these guys figured it out. Obviously, these guys figured it out, but they figured it out because the consciousness on the planet was ready for those answers. And the answers that these scientists and these creative thinkers came up with were a reflection of our understanding of the world and our consciousness at that time. Now, Newtonian physics is an artifact of what I like to call Newtonian consciousness. Newtonian consciousness is all about finite amounts and solutions. It's very fixed, it's very logical, it's very linear. It has fixed laws with probable, possible, and predictable results. Now, if you drop a basketball off of a balcony, you're going to get pretty much the same result every time you do it, because that's an artifact of this kind of thinking. Now, there are ways, if you understand more advanced levels of consciousness or different levels of consciousness, higher frequencies of consciousness, you can change the behavior of the basketball. But when we're strictly talking about Newtonian consciousness, we're talking about fixed and probable formulas. We're talking about reasoning. We're talking about logic. We're talking about nature and natural law. And with it all, we saw this deep human drive for certainty. And certainly everything we created from that place has been rooted around these kinds of ideas. There are formulas, right? We have formulas for everything. We have formulas for education. We have formulas for success. We have formulas for how you create money in the world, right? Work hard, save a lot, equals lots of money, right? These formulas are great. They were very important and very fixed and very vital advances actually in our understanding of the material world. But as our consciousness continued to grow and evolve, what we discovered is that the Newtonian way of thinking was limited. As our consciousness grew and expanded, we started cultivating a different quality of consciousness that I'm going to call quantum consciousness. And that quantum consciousness now changes a lot of the rules, a lot of the formulas of how we created using old Newtonian consciousness. One of the things that I want you to get is that evolution is an imperative of consciousness. Consciousness is always seeking to grow and expand, as are you inside of your own human design. Okay, your imperative, your job in this lifetime is to evolve yourself. And that maybe consciousness, I'm just gonna throw this out here because I've been doing some pretty cool interviews with some leading edge scientists, including most recently Dr. Rupert Sheldrake. Maybe evolution and the idea that evolution can be conscious is more deliberate than what we've been taught in school, and that we are part of the evolutionary change, and we are certainly standing on the leading edge of what I will call the quantum era. In 1920s, scientists, physicists who up until this point were using very fixed formulas about how the world worked began to have the ability to look at the smaller building blocks of matter. They could take a basketball and take it down to an atomic and a subatomic level and start looking at the building blocks of matter. And what scientists, quantum physicists, which started in the 1920s, what quantum physicists discovered is that matter, physical matter, behaves very differently on the subatomic level. That atoms and electrons and other kinds of quantum particles don't work the way physical, tangible, manifest reality works. They don't follow the same rules. And because quantum scientists started to go, okay, wait, the building blocks of matter aren't actually following the rules that Newton set up for us when he talked about the laws of matter. Maybe the laws of matter as we understand them aren't actually operating the way we think they are. The most important thing that quantum physicists discovered was that when you look at a quantum particle, when you observe a quantum phenomenon, a subatomic behavior or atomic behavior, that behavior changes from person to person, depending on what that person expects that particle to do. That our preconceived ideas, our expectations, those qualities of sort of pre-programming ourselves to see a certain outcome on the subatomic level can cause the same atomic particle to behave differently between one scientist and another, even though they may be observing the same particle. This was a very big thing in the 1920s. It's still actually kind of a big thing. It still actually hasn't really integrated deeply into our consciousness, our collective manifested consciousness, our society just yet. Not coincidentally, because consciousness and science and what we understand about the world obviously go hand in hand. We also saw, beginning around this same time frame, the emergence of what we call new thought. We saw Ernest Holmes, Edgar Cayce, Florence Baker Shin, I think that's her name. I just got some of her old books because I wanted to go back and read some of that. Madame Blavatsky, Rudolf Steiner, a little bit later on, Maria Montessori, all these new thinkers who began to talk about how your thoughts create your reality. Your reality is malleable, and what you think and how you perceive your reality can change depending on your thoughts. What we also learned is that we are all connected by virtue of a quantum field. The whole idea of unity consciousness, and actually we saw the beginning of Unity Church at that time, was sort of brought about by this understanding, this surge in understanding of the world based in quantum physics. We discovered that our true creative power lies not so much in our ability to push and move and physically do the work of the world, although that is also important, but that it's our consciousness and what we create, what's called non-locally, meaning what we believe, what we see, what we perceive, all that non-physical stuff that we do as part of our creative power is crucial and actually an essential part of our creative capacity. We saw the introduction of a concept called fundamental creativity, which is what I'm going to be talking about a lot today. We started to begin to entertain the idea that maybe the driver for what we create in the world is no longer going to be money and material gain, but well-being, a non-tangible energy that becomes ultimately the source of a new economy, a new healthcare system, a new way of doing community, that we now start to build communities because we seek greater levels of well-being, not necessarily profit, or that maybe well-being is the profit. And of course, within all of this, we begin to understand the importance of acceptance, embracing change, being okay with uncertainty, and looking at the power and the importance of potential and understanding how to make something that is potential into a physical manifest reality using consciousness. So let's talk a little bit about what is quantum creativity. And for us to understand what quantum creativity is, we have to understand the difference between situational creativity versus quantum creativity. Situational creativity, which is probably what most of us are operating from. We all have moments of fundamental creativity, but we're still working through our situational creativity. Situational creativity happens in the moment. It's in response to something that happens. It's reactive. It's often determined by your conditioning, meaning your belief systems, your past experiences, your past joys, your pains, your traumas. All of that is influencing your creative response. It offers a short-term solution. It is finite. It comes from the conditioned mind. So when you're being situationally creative, you're operating with a set number of parameters. You have to believe that it's possible. You're working with what you know is possible, and you certainly cannot, when you're being situationally creative, even entertain the idea of something that is potentially impossible. It is the result of thinking, i.e. the mind, and it is consequently reasonable. Fundamental creativity, which is where we're headed, it transcends conditioning, meaning fundamental creativity is that creative aha, that epiphany, that understanding, that awareness that happens pop in the moment that goes beyond what you think is possible, beyond even what you know. It's that knowing beyond all knowing. It comes from infinite source, meaning it's a place where you go beyond what you think is possible in your own experiences and you tap into something bigger and more expansive than your individual self. Fundamental creativity is imaginative and possibility oriented. It's aligned with cosmic order, and it is unreasonable, meaning it is a type of creativity that allows us to manifest the seemingly impossible. Sometimes we call that a miracle. For us to understand how to activate our quantum creativity, we have to understand the components of the quantum creative process. So I'm going to break this down for you into the little parts, the particles, the pieces of the quantum creative process, so that you can start to see where you can start playing with these little pieces in a different way, so that you can change the nature of how you manifest and what you create in your life. The quantum field is really the first part, the first component, and the quantum field is just the unmanifest reality. It is a sea, an endless, infinite sea of possibilities and potentials. In that quantum field right now, there exists a you who is deeply in love with your soulmate. There exists a you who's tapping into vitality and wellness. There exists a you who is working work that you love, who is fulfilling your purpose in life. There is a you who has everything you need and want. That potential, that possibility already exists in the quantum field. The second creative part of the second component of the creative model, the second piece that we are drawing from and creating with when we create what we want in our lives, is what's called the mental and the emotional body. This is the place in your energy field where you carry the energetic artifacts or the energetic imprinting of your beliefs, your past experiences, your pains, your traumas, your joys, the things you learned from your parents. your epigenetic programming, meaning the DNA code that contains old beliefs, old traumas, old joys, old patterns, not just from you, not just from your parents, but actually your legacy, your family's legacy of belief systems that will influence the potential of what you can be creating in your life. And even in this particular level of your energy field, we have your human design and your conditioning, all those places where you've been imprinted by others' energies live right here in your mental and emotional body. The next layer in the creative process is called the subtle body. This is the energy template for what you're creating. The way I like to think about the subtle body, it's kind of like a blueprint that surrounds your entire physical form. And it's a filter, and it's a filter that kind of shows us either what we're about to make manifest or what was manifest but is now actually leaving our physical reality. So how that is, let's say if you get a cold, okay, and if you've had a cold, and in your physical body, you fully manifested the cold, right? You got a stopped up nose, you don't feel so good, you're kind of achy. That cold is going to be not only in your physical body, but actually in the subtle body template, in the energy field. So some of you, if you have a cold, not only do you maybe take echinacea and drink lots of fluid and get vitamin C and sleep, that's taking care of the physical. Some of you might also do extra things. Sometimes we call these holistic modalities, where maybe you go get energy work, you get Reiki, or you get acupuncture, or you get you do quantum healing, or you take homeopathic remedies, or you take flower essences. All of those kinds of modalities are actually operating on the subtle body level. They're working on your energy blueprint. As you heal and you get better from your cold, your body gets better and it manifests wellness again. But in your energy template, in your subtle body, you might still see, if you were the kind of person, and there are gifted people out there, excuse me, who are able to look at energy fields, you might see on your aura the shadow or the leaving, the little vestiges of your cold, that imprint of your cold, the energy imprint of your cold leaving your subtle body template. People who are really good intuitives, especially medical intuitives or psychics, oftentimes what they are reading is they're reading your subtle body template, your energy blueprint. The last component, of course, of this creative process is your manifest reality. This is your life right now. Your life right now is what we call the collapsed potential, meaning it is something that used to exist as a possibility in the quantum field. It is now collapsed and fully manifested in your physical reality. The thing that I want you to get, this is how I'm going to really simplify this for you. The subtle body template, the mental and the emotional body, these two layers of your or these two components of the creative process or your creative ability is kind of like a filter. So if you look in the middle of this slide, you'll see there's a blue line across the middle that says your filter, right? And in your filter, you have the beliefs, the pains, the traumas, your energy blueprint, your past experiences, your epigenetic programming, and even your human design. That filter is going to determine what you're most attracted to, which possibility you're most likely to make manifest in your life right now. It's not going to make sense that you're going to manifest something that isn't a match for what's in your filter. Now, sometimes people go, well, why do we have a filter? If it's infinite, why can't we just create whatever we want? You know, that's awesome and it's a great idea, but I don't know if you've ever taken a kid to a candy store. You know, it's very hard for a kid in a candy store to choose. And I'll tell you, with over 28 years of coaching under my belt, probably the biggest thing that I see people really struggle with is clarity. It's hard to get clear. And if you actually are trying to create from an unlimited field without any kind of a filter, it's too much. It's overwhelming. It's actually good to have a filter. It makes the process easier. The challenge is not so much not having a filter and choosing from an infinite number of possibilities. You already have a ton of possibilities to choose from, trust me. The challenge is making sure that whatever you have in this filter is serving you, is really helping you and supporting you pick the possibilities that are most in alignment with what you really want to be creating. This is just a different way of looking at this model. Again, I always see this model. I don't really like it that much because it's so linear, and I really don't think the energy field looks this linear. But just if you are a linear thinker and you need to see what that looks like, you know, all of these colors between the physical body and the quantum field, that's just the elements, the pieces of the filter through which you're creating from. Now, remember, we said in the 1920s, we had the emergence of the thought form that said, I create my own reality. Well, if you create your own reality, you got to know who you are. Who's the you that's creating your reality? You are the space, not the form. Whatever you're creating your reality is malleable. It's variable, and it's constantly changing. In fact, it's changing so much that quantum scientists can measure this. This is such a freaky thing, I think. If you have a chair sitting in an office and you observe the chair and you turn away and you look up and you look at the chair again, the chair that you're looking at isn't going to be exactly the same chair you were looking at before. It actually has moved. And if somebody else comes in and look at the chair, they're seeing a completely different chair. Okay. Your outer reality, your physical reality is very malleable. What's not malleable, I mean, it's malleable, but what's really true to who you are is not the form, but the space. And that space is consciousness. Consciousness is, in essence, the rocket fuel, and it's the mediator through which you go from the physical to the quantum field, and from the quantum field back into the physical. It's where the momentum for the creative process lies. Now, here's the other part that gets really important to understand. Remember, I said when quantum physicists started looking at how small subatomic and atomic particles operated, what they discovered was that there's only two things that they can really measure. They can either measure the movement of a quantum particle, that's potential, or the location of a quantum particle. So they could either notice how it's moving, or they could notice where it is, but they could not measure movement and location simultaneously. What that means is that your potential, the potential of what you could be creating, is in constant motion. The quantum field is in constant motion. It's an infinite sea of moving potentials that are not manifest because they're not in location yet, right? They're moving, they're not located. If you were to locate a quantum particle, if you were to measure where it is, it would become manifest. So location is manifestation. When we are in human bodies, in human form, it's the meaning we give potentials that determine what we make manifest in our lives. So it's the meaning we give concepts, ideas, archetypes that determine how we manifest that particular archetype or that particular potential or idea in our physical world. So your meaning, the meanings you have around things, around experiences, around possibilities, the meanings you have are determined by your conditioning field, your past experiences, your joys, your traumas, your epigenetic programming, and your human design. And if you want to create a different state of well-being in your life, you have to change the meanings you have in your life. So what does that mean? Our perception of the world determines what we create. So I'm going to just show you a quick example. I do this one a lot because it's a really great one. So for just a minute, I want you to take a second, not take a second, but take a couple of seconds and think about your mother, right? Just think about your mother for a minute. You all may have had a very different experience around the energy of the word mother. Mother in and of itself is an archetype, right? A mother is simply a person who perceives themselves as female or defines themselves as female who has a child, right? And you can be all kinds of different mothers, right? You can be an adoptive mother, you can be a surrogate mother, you can be a birth mother, you can be a natural mother, you can be, you cannot be a mother. That's another version of mother, right? You can be a good mother, a bad mother, you can be a crazy mother, you can be a happy mother, you can be a joyful mother, you can be an accomplished mother, you can be an absent mother. There's so many ways that we can be experiencing and expressing the idea of mother, right? Hopefully, when I say the word mother for you, that evokes a beautiful, loving memory. When I said the word mother, or when you read the word mother, what happened in your brain, which is the translator of this whole process, your brain immediately started what's called a photon storm. Photon storm is literally light. Your brain sends signals through photons or light. Photons are also atomic particles. That photon storm then stimulated your brain to create a series of neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are physical chemicals that your brain or your neurobiology produces that stimulate emotional responses. Okay, if I took you into the lab and I measured your neurotransmitters, it's a physical, tangible thing. I can measure it. It's a material thing. Okay, so I want you to just notice right now, you took light And from light, you created matter. That's how creative you are. That's how flippin' powerful you are, all right? Depending on your meanings that you had around the word mothers or mother, and you can have two mothers too, right? Depending on the word that you have, the meanings that you have around the word mother, that meaning would have determined the quality and the quantity and the kind of neurotransmitters and consequently the kind of emotional response you produced to the neutral archetype of the phrase mother. So some of you, when you thought about your mother, it stimulated a happy emotional response. Maybe some of you had a sad emotional response. Maybe some of you were like, you know, I don't want to go there. Mother's a supercharged topic. Maybe you created an anxiety response. You all had different responses to the word mother. And those different responses and those different neurotransmitters and that different emotional energy in response to the word mother came from the meanings that you have around the word mother. This is true for you in every arena of your life. So this is true for you in relation to mother, to money, to relationships, to love, to right work, to where you live, to your connection to source. It doesn't matter. Whatever you're creating in your life, you're going to create it in such a way that it aligns with the meanings that you hold around whatever it is that you're trying to create. Okay, so we have to ask ourselves, what inspired the movement of the photons in the first place? Everything that's in your filter. Okay, everything that's in your filter is what's creating meaning. And the meanings are going to be influencing what you create out of the quantum field. If you want to create the reality you want to be experiencing, you have to leverage the meanings you give your life and your life experiences. We are happiest and most abundant and magical in our current awareness when we are creating in alignment with our authentic self and our unique energy blueprint, your human design, and your soul purpose and your life purpose. So let's talk a little bit about who are you, okay? If your human design is part of that filter, you have to understand the nature of your human design, because if you're not creating from your design, if you're instead trying to create from something in your filter that's not there, if you're trying to create something that's not in alignment with who you are, it makes that creative process very difficult. And that's oftentimes one of the places where we get stuck in our creative process, or where we think we're blocked in our manifesting. Not actually blocked, but we're trying to create something that's not really true to who we are, something that doesn't really match what's in the filter that you're creating with. So when I work with people and I coach them around prosperity and abundance or manifesting, or give them information for how they can create what they really want to be creating in their life, over the years I've noticed there are really two huge challenges to the creative process. The first challenge is this: we are trained to create in one way. We have been trained that there is a formula to manifesting, to creating, right? And some of us have a formula that's very Newtonian, right? If you want to get what you want, you have to work hard and you got to make money. And if you want to make more money, you got to work harder. And once you have the money in place, then you have that freedom and then you can do what you want. That's a formula that a lot of us are creating from. Some of you might be creating in a way that's not right for you because that's not the nature of how your energy field works. Some of you, if you've been on a conscious path for a while, you might be trying to create using all the principles we learned in the movie The Secret. And even if that's how you're trying to create, while there are certain elements of truth from the movie The Secret, it might not be completely right for you to do it that way. There is no one size fits all to manifesting. There's only your way. And one of the things that you have to understand and discover is what is your way of creating. And understanding your human design certainly helps you a lot when it comes to discovering your key components that have to be in place for you to create effectively in a way that sustains you, keeps you abundant and vital, and doesn't burn you out. The second thing that I find oftentimes really gets people hung up in the creative process is this. People are often, I would say 95% of the time, trying to create something they don't really want. They're trying to create what they think they should want. Let me give you an example. I talked about money, right? If you don't think that you can be supported doing what you want to do, and you think the only way that you can do what you want to do is to have money, one of the things we try to manifest is money, right? If I can just get, $100,000 in the bank, then I won't have this money pressure on me, and I can relax, and then I can go do what I really want to do. But the thing is, you might not really want to do the things that you have been trained to think are necessary to create the money in the first place. And so we hit a block, right? All of a sudden now you're not manifesting anything. You're stuck in dead air. Nothing's happening because you're trying to create this money. Because if you had this money, you could do what you really want. What I want to lovingly and gently suggest is that one of the things we have to start doing is bypass those steps that we put in place. Those are formulas. Those are old Newtonian formulas. What quantum consciousness shows us is that you don't have to follow that formula anymore. You can create out of the quantum field directly without having to create these old formulas of what's necessary for us to actually create and achieve what we really want. The other thing that we see is when we talk about trying to create what you want in life, a lot of us, because of the nature of how our human design is hardwired and our conditioning in our human design, we're not actually really clear that we're versus somebody else's. So I'm sorry, I think my internet's a little jumpy, but did I lose
a little? It seemed a little jumpy, but you're good now.
Okay, thank you. I may have to boss everybody around and tell them to get off to their computers upstairs. So the bottom line here is this: there's no one size fits all way to manifest. So for those of you who may be new to human design, as you know, is a synthesis of Eastern Western astrology, the Hindu chakra system, the Judaic Kabbalah, the Chinese I Ching, and quantum physics. It is a system of understanding your energy blueprint so that you can begin to get deeper insights into who is the you that is creating your reality. In human design, we have 5 energy types. This is just the very, 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 very super uber tip of the pyramid of what's contained in the wisdom of the human design chart. But the 5 energy types is a really great place to start when we talk about manifesting and understanding what you need to do and how you need to be in the world to manifest in the way that's right for you, and to start getting clarity about what you really want as part of your creative process. Those 5 energy types are the manifestor, the generator, the manifesting generator, the projector, and the reflector. And if you have never seen human design before, or you don't have your human design chart, please visit our website, or if you're on the Facebook page, if you go up to the top and click on the button, you can go to our website, understandinghumandesign.com. If you go there on the top right-hand side of the web page, you'll see the information that you need to follow, the instructions you need to follow to get your free human design chart, and it'll come with a nice little report. Or as I said, you go up here on top of the Facebook page and you can see it there too. Now, each energy type has a different way of creating. And oftentimes what drives them in terms of what they want can also be different. The manifestor, the first type, is approximately 8% of the population. Manifestors are here to initiate. They have a very unique creative cycle or creative process. Manifestors have what we call a nonverbal internal creative flow, meaning if you're a manifestor type, when you move through the world, you're moving through the world following this inner creative flow that isn't necessarily got language with it. So when you move across the room as a manifestor and you have a creative intent, or you feel inside of yourself there's a creative flow happening and you go to follow it, you're not moving through that room going, okay, I'm going to go in the other room and I'm going to go get the hammer, and I'm going to go to the garage and I'm going to go get some wood, and I'm going to go out in the backyard and I'm going to get some nails and I'm going to hammer this together, and I'm going to make a raised bed garden, and I'm going to go to the store and get some plants. You're not thinking like that when you're a manifestor. You're just moving. And that movement that is you is following this nonverbal internal creative flow. Now that flow has cycles and ebbs and flows. It's on and it's off. It's inward and it's outward. And it's difficult sometimes if you're living with other people, and you probably are because it's the planet that has a lot of people on it. It's difficult for you sometimes to function and interact with other people, because as you start to follow that creative flow and you're so in it, I mean, you're just in it, and people stop you and they say things to you like, oh, what are you doing? Or, oh, do you need some help? The minute people introduce language into the creative process for you, it actually kind of can stop that whole creative flow. And then you have to deal with, first of all, this energy, this creative energy that now suddenly doesn't have anywhere to go. So you can sometimes react with anger, even though these people were just trying to help you. And you're not really angry at them, but you have this big, powerful creative energy now that just got stopped. The flow of it got stopped, and that flow has to go somewhere. It's like a lightning bolt. It's got to get out, right? And then, you can get angry at that point then, because you might not ever catch that creative flow again in that same way. And so there's a fear of like, if I participate in the world and I deal with the people in my world and I have to use language and explain what I'm doing, I might lose my creative flow. So sometimes the manifestor just kind of quietly goes and does their thing anyway. And it can be challenging sometimes to follow that flow. It's very important, if you are a manifestor type, that you look at who are you being impacted, who's being impacted by your actions. And for you to get really clear that you have to let people know what you're doing. That's not natural for you, by the way. If you're a manifestor, that's extremely unnatural. And it doesn't feel good, because the fear is that if you tell people what you're doing, they're going to try to stop you. They might try, but they can't. It's up to you to serve as a steward for that creative flow, as difficult as it may be. And as hard as sometimes your conditioning might be, because oftentimes when we're children and we're manifestors, people try to shut down that creative flow from the very beginning. Your life purpose, if you're a manifestor, is to initiate. Part of your life calling is to follow that flow. And it's not following that flow at cost to others. It's not following that flow in a selfish way. That's not what it's about. It's about being a steward for that creative flow. You're here to serve that flow, because that flow often is the initiating force that gets everything else started for everyone else. And that's an important role to play in the world. And if you're denying yourself, you're denying that creative flow, if you're denying yourself the opportunity to engage in that flow and to use that flow correctly, then you're actually going to have a difficult time creating, because you're going to be jamming down the truth of who you are in the world. And if you're trying to fit that powerful creative flow that's you in a little tiny box, and for you to do it in a way that means you're out in the world trying to work a traditional job. If you're a manifestor, you're not here to work a traditional job. You don't have the energy to sustain traditional work. You have oftentimes a challenge of cycles of creativity. And if you're pushing through a creative cycle that isn't there, if you're off and you're trying to be on because you have a job and you have to stick to it, you may actually find that you burn yourself out. The second thing that oftentimes burns projectors out is that they neglect their own power. If you are a manifestor, yes.
You said projector.
I'm sorry, not projector, manifestor. Sorry, I'm talking about manifestors, not projectors. I apologize. Thank you for that, Cindy. If you are a manifestor, you are incredibly powerful. And oftentimes what happens is over time, we learn to push that power aside as a manifestor. And if you can't properly and fully express that power, it has to go somewhere. And sometimes it gets stuck, and it gets stuck in the body, or it gets stuck in the creative process, and we get blocked and we're not creating what we want to be creating, or creating in the way that we need to be creating. So understanding that you're not here to do work in the traditional way, that you need to follow that creative flow, that you have to inform people what you're doing so they won't interrupt your creative flow. And then you need to serve as a steward for that flow, and know that that's not selfish. That's actually the most selfless and important thing that you can do for the world. That's crucial. The second type is called the generator. Generators are here to do the work of the world. They're approximately 35% of the population. The wealth theme, or the creation theme of the generator, is mastery over time. So if you are a generator, you are here to be or achieve mastery over time. And that mastery comes from doing something, practicing something, learning something over and over and over again over the course of your life. Your strategy is what's called to respond. You are here to look at what's showing up in your outer reality, in the world outside of you, and then to do the things that show up, or follow the signs that show you what feels good and right and correct for you. In other words, if you're a generator, you're here to do what feels good. And you'll know what feels good because you'll get the opportunity to experience it in your physical, tangible reality. So here's an example. Let's say you're a generator, and let's say you want to get a job, and you don't have a job right now and you want to get a job. As a generator type, you can go, I don't know if people still do this, but this is what we used to do when I was, in my 20s and in my teens. You used to go get the want ads, right? Do people still do that, Cindy? Is there such a thing? I guess you go to Monster Hire or
Go to
whatever.
Monster or
Yeah.
LinkedIn, or there's
Yeah.
so many different ones now.
Back in the old days, we used to use a newspaper. So you might go to the newspaper and run your finger down all the want ads. I guess you go to Craigslist now too, right? And as you go down the want ads, the jobs that feel correct or that have potential for you, you'll feel them. You'll be going, that one, that one. That's not so complicated. That's actually how many of us are trained to kind of create in the world anyway. You see what's in your outer reality. You see what shows up, and this is the tricky part. This is so tricky. I spend so much time coaching people to do this. You then follow the things that feel good. It's that simple. See what shows up, follow what feels good. So generators often say, well, what if I have an idea? Ideas are awesome. I love ideas. If you're going to create as a generator, you don't want to create ideas from up here. And I'll show you why in just a minute. You want to create based on your outer reality affirming or confirming for you the right ideas. So if you've ever heard of concepts like following signs, or the universe sending you clues, or the universe showing you what's the next step, those are all ways that the universe brings you something in your outer reality for you to respond to. And once you respond to it, then you can build. Your life purpose as a generator is to build, not literally build a building, but to build your mastery, build your contribution, do the work of the world. The challenge if you're a generator is finding the right work, because we tend to compromise and do what we think we should do, or we do what we think is going to make the money and we wait and try to do the stuff we really love on the side. And oftentimes we don't wait for the right work to find us. We don't let it show up and then respond to it. We go out and we try to force it and try to find it, or we try to make it happen. And when we're making it happen as a generator, it very rarely works. One of the things that happens with generators, they get frustrated and they quit. And so oftentimes generators will have a long road that's covered, it's littered with all these things they've quit along the way. So for the generator, you're designed to stick with something. There's a stair-step learning curve, a stair-step level of mastery for the generator. So generators, when they learn something new, they go up, they have a surge in mastery, then they go across and they sit on a plateau, then they go up again, and then they sit on a plateau. The plateau is that place where no matter what you do, no matter how much you practice, no matter how much you push, nothing's happening and you're feeling frustrated. And that plateau is actually a place where you're building up energetic momentum for the next surge in mastery. We're supposed to kind of go, yay, yippee, ooh, I'm frustrated. Yay, yippee, ooh, I'm frustrated. Yay, yippee, ooh, I'm frustrated. That's part of how generators learn and grow and become masterful. But what happens a lot of times is generators quit. When they get frustrated, they quit. And then they leave behind this sort of trail of regrets. Like, I wonder what would have happened if I'd done this or stuck with that, right? And we don't cultivate the patience for waiting. So to become masterful in the creative process, sometimes a generator has to really learn to wait patiently and creatively, and to not get despondent or despairing around that waiting cycle. The third type is called the manifesting generator. They are sort of a half breed, a mix between the manifestor and the generator. If you are a manifesting generator, your life path, part of your theme is to find shortcuts to mastery. If you're a manifesting generator, you're supposed to skip steps. You're supposed to find the easiest way through things. My sister-in-law is a generator, and I'm a manifesting generator, and we have a family cabin, and we recently had to move out and do some work because we had some water damage, and then move back in. And she spent all last weekend going through all the knives and forks and cups and spoons and taking pictures of them and sending me texts for all the pictures. And I'm just like, as a manifesting generator, I never ever would have gone through that much effort to organize all the spoons and cups and bowls and things. I would just stuck them all in the cabinet and gone outside and gone paddleboarding. So, but that's my shortcut to mastery. Yes.
Fun way. That sounds like a fun way. Now we have about 10 minutes before the hour, so I'm just kind of giving you the time.
I have a clock here.
Oh, I know. I'm fulfilling my purpose.
I know you are. Thank you. So the generator is helping me manage my time. So, All right, so the strategy for the manifesting generator is to imagine before you take action. When you get something to respond to, because you're still a generator type if you're a manifesting generator, first and foremost, things have to show up in your outer reality. Even though you get really frustrated, extra frustrated because you move super fast as a manifesting generator, you then imagine what's possible from that opportunity to respond. You then, just like the manifestor, because you also have a little bit of a nonverbal creative flow as a manifesting generator, you then imagine what else is possible and then inform who's going to be impacted by your action, and then you take action. Just like a generator, the life purpose of the manifesting generator is mastery and building. Challenges, again, include finding the right work, direction, because sometimes in your manifesting generator, you're creating a lot of things at the same time and you're supposed to. It's just not everything you're trying to create always comes into fruition, because some of what you're creating is just a way of keeping your energy occupied so that those right things will actually manifest. Emotionally, the frustration can cause you to quit. Manifesting generators have frustration plus anger. And so that frustration and anger mixed together can sometimes make it even harder to be patient, and then they skip steps and get into trouble. If you are a projector, projectors are approximately 20% of the universe, 20% of the population, maybe 20% of the universe, I don't know. If you are a projector, your theme is to be a midwife to the universe. You are here to literally anchor the energetic template of what we are creating and building. So sometimes projectors say, why am I so tired? I'm not doing anything. You are always working as a projector on an energetic level. You are holding together the template or the grid or the subtle body template of the planet. And that's a big job. And it's a big job that can make you tired even if you're laying on the couch. If you are a projector, you are here to manage and guide the creative process. But in order for you to effectively do it, you have to wait to be recognized and invited by others. And the reason why, it's not punishment. And I know sometimes my projectors think it's punishment. It's not punishment. The reason why you have to do that is because what you carry inside of you is so valuable and so precious that if you are not waiting for the right people who get the value of what you have to offer, if you are jumping the gun and sharing it with everyone and they don't get how precious you are and what you have to offer is, then you're going to waste your energy sharing important and vital information with people who don't value you. Hold your tongue, hold your words, hold your value, hold your preciousness, and don't waste it on people who don't get it. The challenge for you as a projector is sometimes bitterness. Sometimes it feels like life's not fair if you're a projector because things don't happen for you in the same way, and sometimes you really have to wait. There's patience, of course, as a challenge. Sustainability can sometimes be a challenge for the projector because just like the manifestor, projectors aren't really designed to work in the traditional way that we think of as working. So going back to your filter, if you're a projector and you're trying to manifest a job because that's how you want to get money and it's not happening, it might be because it's not right for you to have a traditional kind of job. It's not right for you to go to work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, unless you get invited to do it or you get recognized for it. Then it's a different story. But if you're trying to push in a way or trying to create in a way that's not right for you, you're actually not going to be sustainable. You have the potential to burn out, and that burnout will make it even more difficult for you to create what you want. Faith. Having the faith that the invitations will come is a big, big deal for the projector. And cultivating faith is actually, I think, one of the biggest challenges for the projector and part of the creative process. Reflectors are oftentimes what I call the canaries in the coal mine. They are here to reflect the health of the community and the people around them. A reflector is literally a big karmic mirror, and that's part of your life purpose if you're a reflector. You're here to embody the energy of the community in which you're living. As such, it makes it difficult sometimes for the reflector to get clear about what they really want because they take in so much from the people around them. They have to have about 28 days or sometimes longer to sort of tease through all the different energies inside of them and really find within themselves what is true and right for them, what is their truth, their direction, their desire, what's right for them. And for them to really discover that, they have to, of course, wait at least 28 days, sometimes a full cycle of a moon, sometimes more than one cycle of a moon, especially because A reflector chart changes a lot as the moon moves. Their chart actually changes. And so their energy is quite variable over the course of a month. And they also need that time to sort through what they're experiencing. And while they're waiting those 28 days, they have to talk a lot about what's going on in their decision-making process, because they need to see their choices reflected through others. Because they take in so much energy from other people, direction and becoming enmeshed in their relationships can be kind of tricky. It's hard sometimes for a reflector to ask and create what they want, because the tendency sometimes is to get enmeshed into somebody else's energy and then create what their partner or their friends want instead of what they want. Again, just like the manifestor and the projector, sustainability can be a real challenge for the reflector. So it's hard for the reflector sometimes to really work in the traditional way that we think of as working. So again, going back to the filter, if what's in your filter is a belief that the only way to get what you want or to take care of yourself is to work, and your energy type isn't a working type, there's a conundrum there. And you've got to clear out all the old belief systems, all those old formulas around work, so that when you create your support out of the quantum field, you're creating it in a way that doesn't involve working in the traditional way. When you don't play your assigned role or you follow your strategy, you meet with resistance, feels like this. And oftentimes what's happening again in that creative process is we're not creating true to our human design type. We're trying to live life like a manifestor when we're generators, or live our lives like generators, or create like generators when we're projectors. And then it doesn't work. And not only does it not work, it steals your energy and you get burned out. And when you get burned out, it becomes even more difficult to create. So there are a lot of steps to becoming more fundamentally creative, but I just want to bring one quick thing to your awareness, and I'm going to leave you with some resources to play with. But the most important thing you've got to do, if you're going to clear your filter, clean your filter, so that what you're creating through, the filter you're choosing through as part of your creative process, is as clear and as aligned with who you are as possible. We call that process deconditioning, meaning deconditioning is really the process of connecting deeply with who you truly are. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to use these little quick slides. Cindy, we're going to run about 2 minutes over and that's it, I promise. I'm going to show these slides because I want you to see that when we talk about creativity, oftentimes we associate creativity with art or being artistic. This is my drawing, and I am not artistic at all, but I will say I am radically creative, and I want you to really embrace for yourself the idea that if you're defining yourself as being creative with a very, very small little definition of creativity, I want you to remember that I said the word mother, you created photons, then you created neurotransmitters, then you created an emotional response, you made matter out of light. You're creative, don't forget it. When you look at your human design chart, you'll see that you have elements on your chart that are colored in and elements that are white. Anything in your chart that's colored in is called defined, and that's energy that radiates out into the world. Anything that's white on your chart is what we call open. And anything that's open in your chart is where you absorb and amplify energy. If you look down at the bottom, you'll see a mom, a dad, and a baby. And I know there's a lot of variations on that model, so I apologize if that's a more traditional model. But when you grow up in your family of origin, your parents' energy imprints your energy field. And wherever you have openness, you tend to take in energies that you're around consistently. And instead of going, oh, this is energy from someone else, what happens is we tend to mistakenly identify with it. And when we identify with it, it causes us to create an identity around who we think we are instead of who we really are. And I'll tell you, in the manifesting/creating process, the greatest source of pain, isn't this a beautiful slide, Cindy? The greatest source of pain.
I love the lightning bolter.
I know, isn't it? Is the distance between who you really are and your conditioned self, meaning the more your life is the expression of something that you're not, the more pain, the more stuckness, the more difficulty you have in creating what's really right and true for you. So I just want to show you this quickly. This is the head and the ajna center. Most of you are going to have the chart that looks like the one on the right. Most of you are going to have the head and the ajna open. In fact, 7/8 of you will have the top triangle white in your chart. So 7/8 of you are taking in inspiration from the world around you. That's awesome. That's inspiring. But what happens is you're taking in all these ideas, all this information, all this inspiration from the world around you. If you're absorbing it and you're amplifying it, which you are if you have it open, and you're thinking, oh, I have all this inspiration, and you think it's all yours to fulfill and to manifest, what's going to happen is a couple of things. Number one, you're going to get confused about what you really want, because you're going to be thinking about things that you picked up from other people that might not be what you really want. And some of the ideas that you have might not even be your own. Number two, you're going to get under tremendous pressure to try to figure it out. And then, because most of us are trained to go do instead of to create from a place of beingness, you're going to go out and push with all your energy and try to force it into being, and it's not going to work. And you're going to either end up being angry or frustrated or bitter or disappointed. And you're going to start thinking, I'm blocked, I'm stuck, I'm doomed. You're not. And you're not going to be who you are. You're going to create a lot of resistance in your life trying to live out these ideas that don't even necessarily come from you in the first place. What you think you want, if you don't understand your chart and how your energy field works, what you think you want might not actually be what you want. Presenting with us, challenge number one. Sometimes when people are trying to create what they think they want, what they're actually trying to create is something that somebody else wants, and they're confused and they're not really creating what they really want. We are trained to use our head. If you want to create what you really want in your life, you have to believe you can have what you want. And if your head and your ajna are open, if your mind is really open in your chart, it's hard for you to hold on to fixed beliefs that serve you. Your beliefs are going to be all over the place because that's how they're supposed to work. Your head is a terrible, terrible, terrible place to create from. You know, if you look at the gates and the energies up here, you have confusion, daydreaming, doubt, stories, ideas, mutative, weird thoughts, and opinions. That is not the most creative part in the chart. And in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be showing you different, more powerful creative charts. I mean, different, more powerful places from which to create.
That was a cool graphic too, just before you go on.
Oh, you like this one? I think it embodies the energy of the brain, doesn't it? So this is our beautiful graphic. I am including below a link to some sheets that contain affirmations and questions for you to ask based on your openness. Wherever you have white in your chart, as I said, is where you're taking energy and information in. And that energy sometimes is hijacking your own intentions, your own desires, your own sense of who you are. I want you to, over the next week, play with those questions. Look at where you might have openness and ask yourself, am I living out some of these predictable behavioral patterns that people can be living out when they have these particular centers open? I'm also including affirmations, not just for open centers, but for defined centers, because I want you to see what the highest potential expression of the colored in stuff in your chart is. And if you're not living out that high potential, I want you to start thinking about ways in which you can tap into new ways of expressing the energies of who you are. I want to just gently remind you that in the chart, we are designed to love ourselves, be powerful, we are designed to be the contribution we are here to give to the world. We're designed to forgive and move on. We're designed to take our direction from our connection to spirit as source. We're designed to be vital. We are designed to be fully supported to do what we came here to do. And we are designed to make a contribution to humanity, to set our course and our path in life through compassion and through sharing. The bottom line is, you don't know what you really want until you know who you truly are. As I said, I'm giving you some questions to play with and journal with. I'm giving you some affirmations to play with. I want to remind you of your birthright. The highest expression of your human design is this. It's the full engagement and joy that allows us to evolve by learning from and leaving the past behind, by consciously and consistently expressing our authentic potential and making our unique contribution to the world, by taking our direction from spirit, by being physically vital, by having all the resources we need to fulfill our destiny, and taking actions that are not only good for ourselves, but also for the greater good of the world. In other words, you're designed to feel good being who you are and doing what you came here to do. And we're also designed to be nice to each other. Be yourself. You are the greatest gift you can give the world. Thank you all for joining me. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you, Cindy. Be well. See you next week.